Hey, Vikings fan! Something happened during the Vikings' first joint practice with the Baltimore Ravens that could become one of the most important developments of this preseason. And it wasn't simply one impressive throw or one defensive play. The biggest story was the way Minnesota's offense responded when the Ravens started making things difficult. Because by the end of the session, the Vikings had put together the kind of finish that immediately gets your attention. The Vikings opened the joint practice against Baltimore with one major storyline hanging over everything: Kyler Murray and Justin Jefferson finally getting meaningful work together against one of the NFL's toughest defenses. And there was a reason this mattered so much. According to the practice report, this was expected to be the only opportunity before the regular season opener against the Green Bay Packers for Murray and Jefferson to work against another opponent's defense in this type of setting. And early on, the connection looked exactly like something Vikings fans wanted to see. Be honest, Vikings fans, after seeing Murray and Jefferson connect against Baltimore, are you buying into this quarterback-receiver connection already? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to hit the like button. I'll keep you well informed here about everything that's happening. During 7-on-7 work, Murray delivered a deep shot toward Jefferson down the right sideline. Jefferson made an outstanding play on the football, showing once again why defenses have so much trouble dealing with him. The report described the play as an exceptional effort from Jefferson, including a moment where he shook the defender badly enough to make the play stand out immediately. But then came the part Vikings fans need to pay attention to, because Baltimore didn't simply sit back and let Minnesota's stars dominate. The Ravens' defense became increasingly physical with Jefferson and the Vikings' first-team offense. Marlon Humphrey and the Baltimore secondary were able to make things difficult, particularly by playing physically against Jefferson. That approach is significant, because physical coverage has historically been one of the ways opponents have tried to disrupt his timing and prevent him from getting clean releases. And yet, just when it appeared Baltimore was beginning to control the matchup, Murray and Jefferson connected again, this time against Marlon Humphrey. Jefferson also had a notable rep against Nate Wiggins. Wiggins was able to force a deep incompletion on the following play, showing that Baltimore could answer back, but the overall picture was still clear. Jefferson was creating problems for one of the league's most talented defensive groups. That matters because this wasn't a preseason matchup against an inexperienced or rebuilding defense. The Vikings were going against a Ravens unit that was described in the report as one of the best defenses and one of the best secondaries in the NFL. So if you were looking for a real test of Minnesota's offense, this was it. And then the Vikings' defense started making its own statement. Right from the beginning of 11-on-11 work, Minnesota's pass rush was creating problems. Levi Drake Rodriguez got home on the very first rep of 11-on-11, immediately putting pressure on Baltimore's offense. Just minutes later, Dallas Turner added another sack. Turner, in particular, was reportedly all over the field. He was described as dominant, creating disruption, pushing the pocket backward, and causing problems for Lamar Jackson. And considering the expectations surrounding Turner entering a season in which his role is expected to grow, seeing that type of performance during a joint practice against Baltimore is exactly the kind of development Vikings fans wanted to see. Then Andrew Van Ginkel got through as well. Van Ginkel reached the quarterback but avoided making contact, raising his arms and moving away rather than risking a penalty or unnecessary confrontation with Jackson. The practice report also credited Ben Ginkel, Levi Drake Rodriguez, and Dallas Turner with sacks during the session. So for a moment, everything seemed to be going Minnesota's way. Murray and Jefferson had connected. Jefferson was creating problems for Baltimore's secondary. The pass rush was getting home against Lamar Jackson. But then the Ravens began responding, and that is where this practice became even more interesting, because the Vikings didn't finish the day quietly. Before we get to that ending, there was another storyline developing on offense, one that could have consequences for the running back competition. Deontay Claiborne had a strong overall day, showing explosiveness and making a run that covered roughly 15 to 20 yards before a Ravens defender punched the football loose from behind. The fumble itself was a concern, especially because ball security had already been identified as an issue coming out of college. But the important part is that the mistake didn't erase everything positive he showed. Claiborne demonstrated good vision, saw his blocks, and displayed the explosiveness that makes him intriguing. And perhaps even more interestingly, he received a carry with Minnesota's first-team offense. That detail immediately stands out. The report noted that Xavier Scott did not receive that first-team opportunity during the practice, while Claiborne did. That doesn't automatically determine anything about the regular season depth chart, and the coaching staff could simply have been experimenting with different looks. But it was still notable because Claiborne and Scott are competing for opportunities in the running back room. For now, the early impression was that Claiborne had gained an advantage, not because the competition was officially decided, but because he showed enough to earn a first-team rep. And then there was J.J. McCarthy. His day was not perfect. McCarthy struggled early, including one particularly bad throw during 7-on-7. Miles Price had beaten the defender, but McCarthy sailed the football, turning what could have been a big play into an incompletion. But this is where the story changes, because McCarthy didn't allow that early mistake to define the rest of his practice. Instead, he bounced back late. And the way the Vikings finished the joint practice may have been the most encouraging part of the entire day. The Ravens had started making a late push, but Minnesota's offense took over during the 2-minute drill. Kyler Murray connected with Jordan Addison, then Justin Jennings, before delivering a perfect ball to Justin Jefferson for a touchdown. And Jefferson celebrated by hitting the gritty. That sequence gave Minnesota exactly the kind of finish it needed. The offense was suddenly moving, the quarterback was making plays, and Jefferson was once again at the center of the action. Even more striking was Murray's reaction. After throwing the touchdown to Jefferson in a muddy pocket, Murray ran all the way down the field to celebrate with him. The report described it as a rare display of emotion from Murray, particularly because the pass came with Jefferson working through a double team in the corner of the end zone. That moment matters because it showed something beyond the statistics of a practice rep. The quarterback and his top receiver were visibly celebrating a successful connection against a difficult defense. But Minnesota wasn't finished. After Murray and Jefferson made the biggest offensive play of the 2-minute period, McCarthy followed with a big-time touchdown pass of his own. He also connected on a significant play to Miles Price, giving the Vikings consecutive scoring moments to close out the session. So, despite the early struggles, McCarthy finished on a much stronger note, and that is where this practice leaves us. Minnesota's offense had to fight through adversity. The defense showed serious pass rush disruption. Claiborne put himself into the running back conversation. McCarthy responded after a rough start, and Murray and Jefferson produced the kind of late connection that Vikings fans have been waiting to see. Now, I want to know what you think. After seeing how Minnesota finished this joint practice against Baltimore, are you more confident in the Vikings' offense heading into the regular season? Drop your opinion in the comments, and tell me which development from this practice has you the most excited. But the most important takeaway from this practice may not be any individual play. It may be what the Vikings showed when the Ravens pushed back. Minnesota didn't dominate every snap, and that actually makes the final stretch more meaningful. The offense had to respond, and it did so with several of its most important players making plays at exactly the right time. Kyler Murray's connection with Justin Jefferson was obviously the headline. The two had already connected earlier in the session, But their touchdown during the 2-minute drill was the moment that really changed the tone. Murray found Jefferson in a difficult pocket. Jefferson worked through double coverage, and the play ended in the end zone. Then Murray ran down the field to celebrate with his receiver. For Vikings fans, that is the kind of chemistry you want to see developing before the regular season. The practice report specifically identified that sequence as one of the most positive offensive moments of the day. And there was another reason the finish mattered. J.J. McCarthy had struggled earlier. He missed a potential opportunity to Miles Price during 7-on-7, and that throw was clearly one of the low points of his day. But instead of allowing that mistake to carry through the rest of the session, McCarthy responded during the final offensive period. He delivered a touchdown pass and followed it with another significant connection to Miles Price. That gave McCarthy a much better ending to what had been an uneven practice. That is probably the fairest way to evaluate his performance from this particular session. There were mistakes, but there was also a response. And against a Ravens defense that was making things difficult for Minnesota, finishing strong was important. The same can be said about the defense. The Vikings' pass rush created immediate pressure against Lamar Jackson, with Levi Drake Rodriguez getting home on the first 11-on-11 rep, followed by Dallas Turner several minutes later. Andrew Van Ginkel also got through during the session without actually making contact with Jackson. Dallas Turner deserves special attention here because the report repeatedly highlighted his impact. He was described as being all over the football field, pushing the pocket backward and creating problems for Jackson. For a player expected to take on a larger role, that type of performance is exactly what Minnesota needed to see. But there is still something the Vikings need to clean up: ball security. Deontay Claiborne's fumble was not ignored. The running back made an impressive run, showed good vision, and displayed the explosiveness that makes him intriguing. But the football was punched out from behind. The report specifically noted that ball security had been a concern coming out of college. At the same time, Claiborne's opportunity with the first-team offense is impossible to overlook. He received a first-team carry, while Xavier Scott did not during the session, making the competition in that running back room another storyline worth watching. That does not mean the competition is over. It simply means Claiborne put himself in position to receive meaningful attention from the coaching staff. And then you have Justin Jefferson. Even when Baltimore found ways to slow him down, Jefferson continued creating problems. Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins had successful moments against him, but Jefferson also produced explosive plays against that secondary and ultimately finished the practice with the touchdown that became the defining offensive moment. That is perhaps the biggest reason Vikings fans should pay attention to what happened here. This wasn't simply Jefferson making plays against an ordinary preseason defense. He was doing it against Baltimore, while dealing with physical coverage and double teams, and he still found a way to make the biggest play of Minnesota's offensive finish. So when you put everything together, this joint practice gave us a much more complete picture of the Vikings. There were concerns. McCarthy had a rough beginning. Claiborne put the football on the ground. Baltimore's defense had stretches where it clearly disrupted Minnesota's offense. But there were also major positives. Murray and Jefferson showed flashes of the connection Minnesota needs. The pass rush consistently created pressure. Dallas Turner stood out. Levi Drake Rodriguez made an immediate impact. Claiborne showed explosiveness and earned a first-team opportunity. And McCarthy responded after a mistake, instead of allowing the bad moment to define his day. And perhaps, most importantly, Minnesota finished with energy. The Vikings' offense closed the practice with touchdowns from Murray and McCarthy, while Jefferson was at the center of the biggest moment. The report described the ending as an exceptional offensive finish with loud celebrations. Now the attention turns to what comes next. The Vikings were scheduled to have another joint practice with Baltimore the following day, giving Minnesota another opportunity to test itself against the Ravens before the preseason game. And the next game was expected to feature plenty of J.J. McCarthy, with Kyler Murray not playing. That means this practice was not the end of the evaluation. It was another piece of the larger picture. And now I want to hear from you, Vikings fans. What was your biggest takeaway from this practice? Are you more excited about the Kyler Murray-Justin Jefferson connection, Dallas Turner and the pass rush, or J.J. McCarthy's ability to bounce back after a rough start? And what do you think about Deontay Claiborne receiving a first-team opportunity despite the fumble? Drop your answer in the comments right now. If you're a true Vikings fan, let's see where you stand. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button because it helps the channel reach more Vikings fans. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update from training camp, joint practices, preseason action, roster battles, and everything happening around the Minnesota Vikings. We'll keep breaking down every important development with you all season long. SKOL Vikings!